Hello and welcome to Top Story. France's president is in Washington for his first official visit. He's come bearing a simple message to reconquer the heart of America in a lasting fashion. So far, Nicolas Sarkozy's charm offensive seems to have done the trick. He and US President George W. Bush have toasted their new relationship, burying the hatchet over the Iraq War. The two countries fell out when Sarkozy's predecessor, Jacques Chirac, forcefully castigated Washington in 2003. Sarkozy's language is very different. He talks of France not as an antidote to US power, but as a friend and ally. He expresses his enthusiasm for American society. Traditionally, French elites have not. But many say that this is merely a change of style rather than of substance. And to discuss that, I'm joined by Douglas Yates, Professor of Political Science at the American University of Paris. Thanks very much for joining us on Top Story. Clearly, Sarkozy has brought fresh air to the relationship.
Right. It's one of the most positive moments we've seen in the last decade between French and U.S. relations, and clearly the personality of Sarkozy is very much appreciated. What we'll have to see is, on a policy level, what will come out of it.
And what about the personality? How does that appeal in Washington, in America?
This is a man who has an immigrant origin, which in America is something very positive. He's a person who's seen as very hardworking, but most of all, he's pro-American, and Americans don't feel very loved in the world, so I think they appreciate very much his speech and his discourse.
And is he, in a sense, the French Tony Blair? I mean, he's been compared to Blair in the States.
That's probably what he would like to have, is the role of the United States' major ally in Europe and on the world scene, parlaying his position as president to major power status again.
And this sort of dynamism, then, basically, that's really what is at the heart of the attraction, this sort of Kennedy-esque aura for some people.
It's awesome. I mean, 2 days ago he was in Chad, day before he's in Brittany, now he's in the United States for 26 hours, and then he's going to come back. We don't know what he'll do next. I think he's got everyone by surprise.
Okay, let me just quote you an amusing paragraph from The New Yorker. This is Adam Gopnik in August. He said, "No French personality since Brigitte Bardot has had such a projection screen for wishful dreams and onanistic fantasies on the American right, the fantasies that he's staunchly pro-American, pro-market, and sympathetic to the Republican agenda." That's overstating the case, perhaps. I mean, disappointment could well follow this.
It could, but if you look at the American media, all of the stories covering this visit emphasize how bad relations were before and how good they are now. There's maybe a hope that he'll be more supportive of United States policies on certain areas than will actually turn out, but there's no question he will remain pro-American.
Clearly on Iran and Israel, he's moved away from Chirac.
Right. So on Iran, and this is what they're going to speak about probably in their joint press conference today, although I shouldn't put words in the mouth of the president. On Iran, they're probably going to speak tough about sanctions, and Bush right now needs allies in Iran, particularly since his relationship with Putin is more troubled, and Angela Merkel, with her social democratic allies, is less likely to move. So Sarkozy could be his key ally on the Iranian issue. Afghanistan, where Japan has withdrawn its ships, Sarkozy has actually sent symbolically a few more advisors, but he's maintaining his support in Afghanistan. Also on Kosovo, they've got an agreement on Kosovo independence, and this, of course, is a really complicated issue for Bush with Putin. So there are many positive issues that they're going to be able to announce, but there's trouble on the horizon on 2 or 3 key issues, and of course Iraq.
What about Iraq then? What's the future of that relationship on Iraq?
Every time that Sarkozy has spoken directly to the American press about how positive the new relation will be with France and what good friends they're going to be, he constantly emphasizes, but friends have differences. And every single time on the question of Iraq, he refuses to set his foot into that quagmire. There's no chance that France will go into Iraq.
Similarly, in Afghanistan, there's no chance of sending troops to a hot combat zone, of course.
Well, it's funny. The negotiations over NATO, which are going on, could lead to a situation where France will maintain its presence or augment it in a small way, because Sarkozy right now has on the table a possibility of re-entering into the military command of NATO.
Now, Sarkozy has also raised the spectre that Chirac previously raised of beefing up European defence, a nightmare scenario in Washington because it could be at the expense of NATO.
Absolutely. The United States sees the development of an independent European military capacity as a replication of NATO. Sarkozy claims they're complementary. In Sarkozy's view, we don't have enough troops to go around for largely humanitarian peacekeeping missions. From the United States' point of view, if Europe is going to raise military forces, they should be under the command of NATO and used for the purposes that the United States would like to use them for.
Douglas, what about the issues of trade? Sarkozy's taken a pretty tough line on US farm subsidies.
Right. The big difference in trade is agriculture. The US sees CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy, as unfairly advantaging French agriculture. Ironically, agriculture is not the most important part of either of these economies, but it's a symbolic issue, and also farm votes matter. The positive aspect of trade is that U.S. trade with France represents $1 billion a day. The U.S. is the #1 non-European French trading partner, and France is the #9 trading partner of the United States in the world. They create 1.7 million jobs. So there's, if anything, they're going to build on positive trade relations.
And are they looking at strengthening that partnership? Because, of course, there are these business leaders who are accompanying Sarkozy on this visit.
Yes, and his first speech was to the Franco-American Business Council. The interesting point maybe here, to try to be synthetic, is the question of the weak U.S. dollar. As you know, Sarkozy was interested in maybe weakening the euro a bit to make French goods more competitive. We know IADS said that if the dollar got too weak, it would have a difficult time meeting its orders. On the other hand, when he spoke to the Business Council, he said a strong economy needs to have a strong currency, and the dollar shouldn't be too weak. So it's clear that he would like to have perhaps a weaker euro, but a stronger dollar.
On the environment, what are the differences?
They're major. George Bush is, of course, the oil president. The policy in Iraq has been interpreted as an effort to secure Middle East oil supplies. And after Al Gore won the Nobel Peace Prize, the Bush administration made an effort to express that it's not planning on changing its environmental policy, whereas after the Grenelle de l'Environnement, Nicolas Sarkozy has indicated he'd like to do a more European approach. For example, the stopping of building roads. There was a very funny article of a mock conversation in the Herald Tribune where Bush was shocked that the French would stop building roads, and he said that would never happen in Texas.
Okay, so plenty of points in common, but also differences which will have to be addressed in this new relationship. Douglas Yates, a professor of political science at the American University of Paris. Do join me at the same time tomorrow for another edition of Top Story.